October 14th, 2025. 2:47 a.m. A strip mall parking lot outside Wichita, Kansas. Two men pried open the rear door of Heartland Firearms with a flathead screwdriver and a crowbar. 93 seconds. That's how long the alarm company's response window lasted before notification reached local police. In those 93 seconds, they loaded 41 handguns and 7 rifles into a modified cargo van. No gloves, no masks, no rush. They'd done this before. 6 days later, those same 48 weapons would surface 400 miles away at a motorcycle rally outside Rapid City, South Dakota. Serial numbers ground flat. Prices? $300 to $800 cash. No paperwork, no questions, no background checks. The ATF would eventually trace this single theft to a network spanning 9 states, 1,200 recovered firearms, and 38 federal indictments. But on that October night in Wichita, it was just another break-in. One of dozens that year. One of hundreds across the region. The tip came in on October 9th, 2025, 5 days before the Wichita break-in. A confidential informant, designated CY2241 in ATF case files, contacted the Kansas City Field Division with a simple claim. Rally vendors in the Midwest biker circuit were selling stolen firearms alongside leather goods and motorcycle parts. The ATF receives thousands of tips per year. Most lead nowhere. CI2241's was different for one reason. The informant provided a specific location, a specific date, and a specific name. A vendor known as Dale, who operated out of a silver Dodge Ram pickup with Oklahoma plates, selling pistols from a locked toolbox mounted in the truck bed. The informant had purchased a Glock 19 from Dale at a rally in Sturgis the previous August. Paid $400 cash. No receipt. The gun had no serial number. Special Agent Karen Marsh of the ATF's Kansas City Field Division ran the informant's details against existing case data. 3 open investigations in 3 different states, Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska, all referenced firearms stolen from rural gun stores appearing at large public events. None of the investigations had connected the events to motorcycle rallies specifically. None had identified a network. Marsh pulled theft reports from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives National Tracing Center. In the 12 months prior to October 2025, 219 firearms had been reported stolen from gun stores in a 9-state area stretching from Ohio to Montana. Of those, only 14 had been recovered, a 6% recovery rate. The national average for stolen firearms recovery sits around 10 to 12%. 6% meant these guns were disappearing into a system designed to keep them invisible. Marsh requested authorization for a preliminary investigation. Her supervisor, Assistant Special Agent in Charge David Fontaine, approved it within 48 hours. The operation received a designation, Iron Thunder. The motorcycle rally circuit in the American Midwest operates on a seasonal calendar that runs roughly from April through October. Dozens of events each year, ranging from local club gatherings of a few hundred riders to major rallies drawing tens of thousands. The largest, Sturgis in South Dakota, the Republic of Texas rally, Laconia in New Hampshire, are well-documented cultural events. But below those are hundreds of smaller rallies, regional meets, charity rides, swap meets, and weekend gatherings at fairgrounds and campgrounds across rural America. These smaller events operate with minimal oversight. Local law enforcement might station a deputy at the entrance to manage traffic. Vendors set up tables, truck beds, and trailer displays. Most sell legitimate goods, parts, apparel, accessories. The events generate revenue for small towns. Nobody scrutinizes vendor inventory. This was the gap the network exploited. Between rallies, the supply chain operated with mechanical regularity. A TF analyst later reconstructed the pattern from theft reports, surveillance data, and cooperating witness testimony. The process was consistent. A team of 3 to 4 individuals, later identified as the theft crew, targeted rural gun stores in low-security locations. strip malls, small towns, stores with basic alarm systems and no overnight security guards. The crew would hit 3 to 4 stores per week, rotating across states to avoid establishing a geographic pattern in any single jurisdiction. The stolen firearms went to a processing stage. At locations in rural Oklahoma and southern Kansas, a second team removed serial numbers using industrial grinding tools. This step converted the weapons from stolen property, traceable through the National Crime Information Center database, into ghost guns with no retrievable history. The processed weapons were then distributed to a network of vendors who traveled the rally circuit. These vendors maintained legitimate front operations, selling motorcycle accessories, leather goods, custom parts, while carrying inventories of untraceable firearms in locked containers, modified saddlebags, and concealed compartments in their vehicles. Buyers were predominantly individuals who could not legally purchase firearms, convicted felons, individuals under restraining orders, gang intermediaries purchasing in bulk for resale. Cash only. No digital trail, no shipping records. The entire system existed outside the infrastructure that federal and state regulators monitored. If you're watching this right now, hit that subscribe button. The next part of this investigation is where the operation shifts from intelligence gathering to something far more dangerous. ATF embedded 4 undercover agents into the rally circuit beginning in late October 2025. This was not a simple assignment. The motorcycle rally subculture is tight-knit, suspicious of outsiders, and operates on personal introductions. An unfamiliar face asking the wrong questions could collapse the investigation. Or worse. Agent Marsh selected her team carefully. 2 agents had prior undercover experience in outlaw motorcycle gang investigations. A third had worked long-term narcotics operations in rural communities. The fourth was a firearms specialist who could credibly discuss, handle, and evaluate weapons, essential for gaining trust among vendors selling stolen guns. The agents entered the circuit as vendors themselves. ATF established 2 front businesses, one selling custom motorcycle leather goods, another selling aftermarket exhaust systems. Both were registered businesses with functional websites, social media accounts, and inventory. Agents manned vendor tables at rallies, building relationships over weeks. The first significant contact came on November 3, 2025, at a swap meet outside Springfield, Missouri. An undercover agent, designated UC1 in court documents, was approached by a vendor at an adjacent table who offered to sell him a Smith & Wesson M&P shield for $350. UC1 examined the weapon. The serial number had been removed. He purchased it. The transaction was recorded on a concealed camera. That vendor was later identified as Travis Boone, age 44, of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Boone had a prior conviction for aggravated assault in 2016. He was a prohibited person, legally barred from possessing firearms, let alone selling them. Over the following weeks, UC1 and UC2 made repeated purchases from Boone and from other vendors Boone introduced them to. The network's trust system was layered. A new buyer could purchase 1 or 2 weapons at a time. Larger orders required introduction by an existing network member. Bulk purchases, 10 or more weapons, required direct contact with what agents came to call the middle tier, individuals who coordinated between the theft crews and the rally vendors. By December 2025, the undercover agents had identified 14 active vendors operating across the rally circuit. Each vendor maintained a territory, specific rallies they attended regularly. But territories overlapped, and vendors frequently appeared at the same events. The ATF mapped the network using a combination of undercover purchases, physical surveillance, and cell tower data obtained through court-authorized pen register orders. The pen registers didn't capture call content. That would require a wiretap. But they recorded which phones communicated with which other phones and when. The communication pattern revealed a hierarchical structure. At the bottom, the vendors. 14 confirmed, with evidence suggesting additional sellers the agents hadn't yet contacted. In the middle, 3 to 4 individuals who coordinated logistics. They arranged which vendors received which weapons. managed the processing of stolen firearms, and handled cash collection. At the top, 3 individuals who planned and directed the theft operations. These 3 would become the primary targets of the federal indictment. The first break in identifying the leadership came from an unexpected source. On December 17, 2025, UC3, the firearms specialist, was examining a batch of weapons offered for sale at a rally outside Omaha, Nebraska. One weapon, a Sig Sauer P32, had its serial number ground off, but the grinding was imprecise. Under magnification, UC3 could read partial characters. The ATF's National Tracing Center ran the partial serial number against its database. The weapon matched a Sig Sauer P320, reported stolen from a gun store called Range and Ready in Salina, Kansas, on September 22, 2025. The store's owner had reported 23 weapons stolen in the break-in. Investigators pulled the store's employee records. Range and Ready had employed 6 people in the 12 months prior to the theft. One name stood out, Kyle Denton, age 31, who had worked as a sales associate from March to July 2025. Denton had been terminated for attendance issues, but during his employment, Denton had full access to the store's inventory management system, alarm codes, and knowledge of the store's layout. Specifically, he knew which display cases were locked and which were secured with simple latches. He knew the alarm company's response time. He knew that the store's security cameras recorded to a local DVR unit stored in the back office, not to the cloud. The ATF obtained a federal search warrant for Denton's residence in Wichita. On January 8, 2026, agents executed the warrant and recovered a laptop computer, 3 prepaid cell phones, and paper notebooks containing handwritten lists. The list detailed store names, addresses, alarm companies, and, critically, inventory estimates. Denton wasn't just a thief, he was a planner. Forensic analysis of the laptop revealed communication with 2 other individuals, Marcus Harlan, age 38, of Oklahoma City, and Jesse Pruitt, age 29, of Joplin, Missouri. Both Harlan and Pruitt were former gun store employees. Harlan had worked at 2 different firearms retailers in Oklahoma between 2021 and 2024. Pruitt had worked at a store in Joplin until early 2025. 3 former gun store employees, each with insider knowledge of how small firearms retailers operate, alarm systems, inventory procedures, camera setups, and delivery schedules. Together, they had assembled a playbook for robbing gun stores with minimal risk and maximum yield. The theft data confirmed their efficiency. Between March and December 2025, the network was linked to 47 confirmed gun store burglaries across 9 states. Average haul, 25 to 35 weapons per theft. Total estimated firearms stolen, over 1,400. Of those 1,400, the ATF would ultimately recover 1,200. That leaves 200 firearms unaccounted for. As of April 2026, their location is unknown. The investigation expanded in January 2026. Agent Marsh presented the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Missouri. Federal prosecutor Angela Reeves reviewed the evidence and authorized a grand jury proceeding to begin building indictments. The case was complex. 9 states meant 9 different judicial jurisdictions. The U.S. Attorney's Office coordinated with federal prosecutors in Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Iowa, and Ohio. Each jurisdiction had its own pending investigations into gun store thefts that now connected to Iron Thunder. The Department of Justice authorized a multi-district prosecution strategy, consolidating the core charges in the Western District of Missouri, while allowing individual districts to pursue supplementary charges as needed. Meanwhile, the undercover operation continued. The agents couldn't stop buying. Any change in purchasing behavior could alert the network. From January through March 2026, the 4 agents completed an additional 112 documented purchases, bringing the total to over 300 individual transactions captured on hidden cameras. Each purchase followed the same pattern: cash exchange. No receipts, no names. Buyers and sellers communicated through burner phones purchased at gas stations and big box retailers. Phones were used for days, sometimes weeks, then discarded. The network cycled through hundreds of prepaid devices over the course of the operation. Leave a comment below. How many of these untraceable firearms do you think are still circulating right now? In February 2026, the investigation hit a complication. UC2 had developed a relationship with a mid-level network coordinator named Ray Stillwell, age 51, of Topeka, Kansas. Stillwell managed vendor assignments for rallies across Kansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota. He trusted UC2 enough to discuss logistics openly. On February 11, 2026, during a meeting at a truck stop outside Manhattan, Kansas, Stillwell told UC2 something that shifted the scope of the case. Stillwell mentioned that the guys up top were exploring a new revenue stream, converting semi-automatic weapons to fully automatic fire using auto-sears. Small metal devices, often illegally manufactured or imported, that modify a firearm's firing mechanism. A standard semi-automatic handgun or rifle fires 1 round per trigger pull. An auto-sear converts it to continuous fire, holding the trigger sprays rounds until the magazine empties. Under federal law, possession of an unregistered auto-sear is equivalent to possessing an unregistered machine gun, a Class 3 felony carrying up to 10 years in federal prison per device. Stillwell indicated that a supplier, like someone outside the existing network, was providing auto-sears manufactured overseas and shipped into the U.S. through commercial mail. The network was installing them in select weapons and selling the converted firearms at a premium, $2,000 to $3,000 per gun, compared to $300 to $800 for a standard stolen handgun. This elevated the threat profile of the investigation significantly. Stolen handguns in the hands of prohibited persons were dangerous. Fully automatic converted weapons in those same hands represented a different magnitude of risk. Agent Marsh escalated the intelligence to ATF headquarters in Washington, D.C. The Bureau's Firearms Technology Branch confirmed that auto-sear seizures had been increasing nationally, up 40% in 2025 compared to the prior year, with many traced to overseas manufacturers selling through encrypted messaging platforms. A TF headquarters assigned additional resources to Iron Thunder. 2 more undercover agents were deployed. The Bureau's Special Operations Division provided enhanced technical surveillance equipment. The FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force was briefed, though the investigation remained ATF-led. By late February, UC2 had been introduced to the auto-sear supplier, a man identified as George Ngo, age 34, operating out of a residence in suburban Minneapolis. Ngo was not part of the original theft network. He was a separate operator who had connected with Harlan through an encrypted messaging group. Ngo imported auto-sears from a manufacturer in Southeast Asia. The devices arrived in small packages, 5 to 10 per shipment, declared as machine parts on customs forms. U.S. Customs and Border Protection processes millions of small parcels annually. The devices, smaller than a credit card, were virtually undetectable in the flow of commercial mail, without specific intelligence directing inspection. UC2 purchased 3 converted weapons from Stillwell in late February. A TF's Firearms Technology Branch tested them. All 3 functioned as fully automatic weapons. Rate of fire, approximately 900 rounds per minute. Each weapon constituted a separate federal charge. In total, the investigation would identify 43 fully automatic converted weapons within the network's inventory. 43 unregistered machine guns circulating through cash and carry sales at public events attended by families. The tactical planning for the takedown began in early March 2026. Agent Marsh and ASAC Fontaine coordinated with the U.S. Marshals Service, which would execute the arrest warrants, and with state and local law enforcement agencies in all 9 states who would provide support. The challenge was simultaneity. 38 targets across 9 states. If arrests began in one location and word reached targets in other states, individuals would flee, destroy evidence, or, given the nature of the network, potentially respond with armed resistance. The operation had to be synchronized. The U.S. Marshals Service assigned its regional fugitive task forces to the operation. Each task force assembled arrest teams for their respective targets. The teams conducted pre-operational surveillance on each target's residence, workplace, and known locations beginning March 10, 2026. Agents mapped daily routines, identified vehicles, confirmed addresses, and assessed potential risks. Risk assessment was critical. These were targets involved in firearms trafficking. The assumption was that every location would contain weapons. Entry teams planned accordingly: body armor, ballistic shields, breaching tools. No-knock warrants were obtained for 12 locations where intelligence indicated the highest concentration of firearms or where targets had histories of violence. March 22, 2026. The date was selected because it fell between major rally events. Most targets would be at their home residences rather than on the road. Weather forecasts indicated clear conditions across all 9 states, reducing operational complications. The synchronized execution time was set for 5 a.m. Central Time. Adjusted for time zones, that meant 6 a.m. Eastern in Ohio, 4 a.m. Mountain in Montana. Early morning. Targets asleep or just waking. Minimal civilian activity in surrounding areas. At 4:45 a.m. Central Time, arrest teams confirmed positions at all 38 target locations. Communication ran through a dedicated encrypted radio channel monitored at the ATF's Kansas City Field Division, which served as the operations command center. Agent Marsh was in the command center. Screens displayed real-time GPS positions of every arrest team. A direct line connected to the U.S. Marshals Service Command Post in Arlington, Virginia. 5 a.m. Central. The order went out: execute, execute, execute. In Wichita, Kansas, a 12-person team from the U.S. Marshals District of Kansas Task Force approached Kyle Denton's residence at 1423 North Meridian Avenue. A single-story rental house, chain-link fence, 2 vehicles in the driveway. Agents breached the front door with a battering ram at 5:01 a.m. Denton was in bed. He offered no resistance. Agents recovered 11 firearms from the residence, including 4 with obliterated serial numbers, a laptop computer, and over $9,000 in cash. In Oklahoma City, a team hit Marcus Harlan's apartment at the Riverside Crossing Complex on Southeast 29th Street. Harlan was awake, sitting at his kitchen table. He attempted to reach for a handgun on the counter. Agents ordered him to the floor. He complied. The handgun was a stolen Ruger LC9 with its serial number removed. Agents recovered 23 additional firearms from a storage unit Harlan rented 2 blocks from his apartment. In Joplin, Missouri, Jesse Pruitt was arrested without incident at his girlfriend's residence. Agents recovered digital storage devices containing encrypted communications with Denton and Harlan, along with detailed spreadsheets tracking firearms, type, quantity, acquisition date, sale price, and the rally at which each weapon had been sold. The spreadsheets covered 8 months of transactions. Pruitt had kept books, meticulous records of an illegal enterprise. Prosecutors would later describe the spreadsheets as the most comprehensive self-documentation of a firearms trafficking conspiracy we have encountered. Across 9 states, 35 of 38 targets were taken into custody by 6:30 a.m. Central. 3 individuals were not at their expected locations. Federal warrants were issued and 2 were apprehended within 72 hours. One, a vendor named Carl Lumley, age 47, of Bismarck, North Dakota, remained at large for 9 days before U.S. Marshals located him at a campground outside Billings, Montana. Simultaneous search warrants yielded the scale of the network's inventory. The 1,200 recovered firearms included 622 handguns, 341 rifles, 194 shotguns, and 43 fully automatic converted weapons. Additionally, agents seized over 60,000 rounds of ammunition, industrial grinding equipment, 47 autosear devices not yet installed, and approximately $280,000 in cash. George Ngo was arrested in Minneapolis at 6 a.m. Central. His residence contained an additional 31 autosear devices, shipping records documenting over 100 previous imports, and communications with the Southeast Asian manufacturer. Customs and Border Protection initiated a parallel investigation into the import pipeline. Ray Stillwell was arrested in Topeka. He provided no statement to investigators. His attorney entered a not guilty plea at the initial appearance. On March 28, 2026, a federal grand jury in the Western District of Missouri returned a 57-count indictment against 38 defendants. Charges included conspiracy to traffic in stolen firearms, possession and sale of firearms with obliterated serial numbers, illegal possession of machine guns, and felon in possession charges for those defendants with prior convictions. Denton, Harlan, and Pruitt faced the most severe charges as the network's organizers. Each was charged with leading a continuing criminal enterprise in firearms trafficking, a charge carrying a mandatory minimum of 20 years in federal prison. Ungo faced additional charges related to the illegal importation and manufacture of machine gun conversion devices. 17 of the 38 defendants had prior felony convictions. Under federal law, a convicted felon found in possession of a firearm faces up to 15 years. Trafficking charges add additional mandatory minimums. As of April 2026, 12 defendants have entered guilty pleas and cooperation agreements. The remaining 26 have pleaded not guilty. Trials are scheduled to begin in the fall. The case files reveal specific details about the network's customer base. Of the over 300 documented undercover purchases, buyer profiles broke down along consistent lines. Approximately 40% of sales went to individuals with felony records who could not legally purchase firearms through licensed dealers. Another 25% went to intermediaries purchasing on behalf of third parties. Straw purchases in ATF terminology. The remaining 35% went to individuals whose legal status was unclear, but who specifically sought untraceable weapons. Several recovered firearms have already been linked to violent crimes. A stolen Taurus G3C sold at a rally in Des Moines in November 2025 was recovered at a homicide scene in Kansas City in January 2026. A converted fully automatic Glock 19 sold through the network was seized during a drug raid in Omaha in February 2026. The connection between stolen firearms and downstream violence is not theoretical. It is documented in case file after case file. Every weapon that moved through the network's cache and carry system entered a space where federal tracking mechanisms do not function. The ATF's National Tracing Center processes over 450,000 trace requests annually. Each trace depends on a serial number. A weapon with no serial number cannot be traced. It has no origin point, no purchase history, no chain of custody. It exists outside the system entirely. The network understood this. The grinding of serial numbers wasn't just evidence destruction, it was a business model. A traceable stolen gun carries risk for the buyer and seller. An untraceable gun carries risk for no one in the transaction, only for whoever is on the other end of the barrel. Operation Iron Thunder exposed a vulnerability in firearms regulation that extends beyond this single network. The motorcycle rally circuit was the distribution mechanism, but the underlying conditions remain. Rural gun stores with minimal security, an estimated 400 million firearms in civilian circulation, a secondary market that operates entirely outside the background check system. ATF Acting Director Christopher Hetrick stated in a press briefing on March 29, 2026, that Iron Thunder represented one of the largest firearms trafficking operations dismantled in the Midwest in the past decade. The Bureau allocated additional resources to a follow-up operation targeting the AutoSear import pipeline identified through NGO's communications. But the numbers tell a specific story. The network operated for at least 10 months before the ATF received the initial tip. During that time, an estimated 1,400 firearms were stolen. The operation recovered 1,200. That leaves roughly 200 weapons, including an unknown number of fully automatic conversions that have not been accounted for. Those guns are somewhere, in closets, in glove compartments, in the hands of individuals who purchased them specifically because no one would know they had them. The rally circuit continues. Events are scheduled across the Midwest through the fall of 2026. Vendors will set up tables. riders will browse parts and leather and chrome accessories. Most of it will be legitimate. The question is what percentage of it won't be, and whether the next CI2-241 will pick up the phone. The network built by Denton, Harlan, and Pruitt is dismantled. The infrastructure that made it possible, hundreds of poorly secured gun stores, a secondary market with no oversight, and public events with thousands of attendees and zero vendor screening, remains exactly as it was. 38 people face federal charges. 1,200 weapons sit in evidence lockers. 200 more are still out there.